It's been since September 2015. That's when the original release of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain came out. Remember, it was actually an Xbox 360 title as well. That's how far the game dates back. It's been a long time since we've played like any new type of Metal Gear Solid experience. Obviously, the debacle that happened between Konami and Kojima, nobody really knows what happened, but it left this series up in the air. Nobody knew what was going to happen with Metal Gear Solid, and finally, we do have a new Metal Gear Solid game coming. Metal Gear Solid Delta, a remake of the original Metal Gear Solid 3. Obviously today there's been a bunch of brand new previews that have came out about the game. And I thought this would be a pretty good time to actually talk about what some of these previews are saying and give my overall opinions on like what I think about Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. Like what I actually think about this game that's coming out after being like such a big Metal Gear Solid fan through the years. I've played them all since the original game. The only games in the series I've actually played are the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. I never really went back to those games, but I started on the original Metal Gear Solid 1. Obviously, I think personally that the series is one of the best series that's ever existed in gaming, and it's actually hard to believe that it's been almost 10 years since we've had a full proper Metal Gear Solid game. I mean, I just think the gaming world in general is in a worse state because we don't have a series like Metal Gear Solid anymore. Genuinely, every single Metal Gear Solid that was coming out was such a big deal. Every single game that's ever came out has been like such a big deal for me personally, but I do think some of the more hyper ones that were ever coming out back in the day were the original Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. Like the hype levels were insane for the original Metal Gear Solid 2, and I would mostly say it all paid off because like I think those games still to this day have an absolutely amazing legacy, and I actually still play Metal Gear Solid 1, 2 and 3 on a yearly basis, all three of them on a yearly basis. Not as much Metal Gear Solid 3 anymore. More these days I kind of go back and play Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. I don't really play 4 or 5 that much at all. It's mostly the original trilogy that I play a lot, MGS 1, 2 and 3. Now you might have just caught me saying there that I actually don't play Metal Gear Solid 3 as much anymore. Well, why is that? Well, I think it's honestly like gaming fatigue when it comes to like Metal Gear Solid 3. I can honestly say it's probably still my favourite one in the series, but it's like the least one I play nowadays, purely because of the fact that I've played it too much over the years. And I'll be honest and admit that right now. I've played the game far too much over the years that I'm kind of like a little bit sick of the sight of it. I think that's an okay thing to kind of say. If anybody's like had a favourite game over the years, you play it too much. When you turn the game back on 5-10 minutes in, you're like, oh wow, this again. So it kind of like leads me more down the path of playing games like MGS 1 and 2 more these days, because I actually have played them nowhere near as much as I ever played Metal Gear Solid 3. I'm a firm believer that Metal Gear Solid can actually exist without Hideo Kojima, and I actually want it to exist without Hideo Kojima. No hate towards Hideo Kojima at all. I just am too much of a Metal Gear Solid fan for the series to keep going on. Resident Evil goes on without Shinji Mikami in this day and age, and it's still doing pretty well under different people's perspectives and what they want the series to be. And you know, you play the games if you want, you enjoy the games if you want, or you don't. And that's how remakes work. That's how series, when they go on without their original creators, work. And I definitely want Metal Gear Solid to go on without Hideo Kojima. Although I can't help but feel like I definitely am a little bit disappointed that they announced that their first game that they were making without him would actually be just a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. Especially for me, because it doesn't really look like they're doing anything different for this Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. You know, I'm a firm believer these days for myself that like if they're gonna remake a game that doesn't really feel like it needs to be remade, then they might as well throw some different stuff in there to make it feel different, you know? Because the original title, like the original Metal Gear Solid 3 to me is still like perfectly playable, and it plays great, sounds great, looks great. I mean, there's like literally nothing wrong with the original Metal Gear Solid 3, and they just re-released it again a little while ago, the HD Collections remaster. Everybody can play it. I mean, like right now, you can kind of like play Metal Gear Solid 3 fine. And the remake is basically just, well, to me, it just feels like it's for people that only love graphics, because that is all they're really changing with this update. Don't get me wrong, there's a couple of quality of life changes coming in here and there. And I'm not saying it's going to be a bad game at all. I'm not saying that. I think like it's going to be the game that we all know and love, and that's fine. But like for me, I kind of like think they should like look at some of the other games that have been made over the years that have done like really good in terms of remakes. Like even the original Resident Evil remake that came out on the GameCube back in the day that got remastered is like still considered to be one of the best remakes that's ever been made. Maybe still the best remake that was ever made. And you know, it basically adds a bunch of new stuff in there, but it still feels like a love letter to the original game. And even with Resident Evil 4, which is the newest remake that Capcom have made, because everybody at the start didn't really think that that game needed a remake at all, and I was definitely one of those people. But after the remake came out, I was like, this game is fantastic. It feels like a love letter to the original game again. It's different enough to coexist alongside the original Resident Evil 4. But that's what gets me about this MGS3 remake, is just I can't help but shake the feeling that I don't think it'll be different enough to stand on its own, because all it will have is literally like a graphical overhaul. That's all it will have over the original MGS3, and it just won't be different enough. And I think it could be a bit of a wasted opportunity to like actually go forward without Hideo Kojima and create something new and make everybody look and feel more excited for the future of Metal Gear Solid, you know? I absolutely hope I am wrong with this take on MGS3 Delta, but I can't help but shake the feeling that I have. I am sorry to say. On the other hand, I do think Silent Hill 2 Remake looks great right now. Different enough from the original to stand on its own 2 feet, and I'm looking more forward to that remake rather than the MGS3 remake here. Guys, let me know what you have thought about the previews that have been coming out about MGS3 though. Are you guys just absolutely ecstatic about playing Metal Gear Solid 3 with shiny new graphics, but basically the same everything else? You guys let me know. I hope the game is going to be amazing. I'll catch you in the next one.